Hey guys, sorry it's been a while. Um, I blame the Steam Winter Sale and Oscar season. Between those two things, yeah, I didn't do much of this. So we're in the kicking off right with the Stoics' last flashback, which is the shortest one actually, and also probably the best, which is interesting because the last one is so long. You know, we split it up into 3 parts, like I said, but this one's only like 10 minutes. And, it's just good. I wish I wrote like this more, it's a lot of feelings, a lot of feelings and a lot of content in a fairly short time. But, we're in the freeloading years, as Solik referred to them, which is always, a fun part of this bit, having him around to riff on the story. This I tried to make this map look very much kind of like a suburbia, or at least as close as you could get in, in a RPG Maker game with a medieval look. Just this idea of like the world's at peace, or at least good enough. There's probably some conflict somewhere, but we don't have a chaos of the rain and fire is over. Don't have Anchor running around murdering people. Of course, the knighthood is long gone. But as Delgren is saying, there's a the galleons are coming, which they're not calling themselves that. It's just the new knighthood. But it's kind of about the it's like a pendulum, really. And I think this is true for the world we live in too. Is that sometimes you go one way and you think, we're past that. We're past the hate and the bigotry, and then it goes the other way and it comes back stronger than ever. And this scene here, where they just they've killed the fairy, and they barely say anything. They don't, it's a very chilling scene here. And of course, Stoic is not used to knights using magic, because that used to not be a thing. And then Delgren just gets killed. And it's just short and brutal. And the wife and kid are dead too, and I didn't show you that because that would have been awful. And we didn't really have the sprites. But we did have the dead fairy sprite. And really, like, anytime I wanted to, like, anytime I want to shock people playing these soulless games, you kill a fairy. That hits home for some reason. Just, because they're just so good, It's hard to imagine anybody wanting to hurt them. Now we have here Stoic trapping himself in this cave, kind of unintentionally at first. He's basically just kind of like lashing out and causes enough rubble that he's stuck in there, but then he kind of decides not to try and get out. And this plot point is a little divisive, I guess. There's some folks who kind of thought that it compromised Stoic in his sort of badass nature to have him, like, go into this sort of self-imposed imprisonment for 400 years, which was most of the Gallian reign. And maybe if you take it like totally literally, it is kind of strange, but for me, this was about depression. Like, I watched this and it's like obvious to me that this is about depression. And I think people who have really like struggled with that would recognize that as well. I mean, I guess, people handle it differently, but my feeling when I had it, when it was really bad, when it gets really bad, is that I just would like to disappear. Now, it doesn't mean suicide. I mean, I have a hard time kind of like saying that because people will assume that that's what I'm talking about. But no, it's not quite that. I mean, look, if I didn't kill myself in high school and nobody fucking liked me, I'm not going to do it now. So that ship has sailed. But I just kind of want to disappear. I have these like fantasies about getting in a car, driving way up north to the fucking end of the earth, Alaska or Canada or some shit, and just like, I don't know, living in an igloo or something. That's just the kind of thing that goes through my mind. I just want to be away from everybody. But so this was a variation on that, I think. And if I can just say one more thing, I don't think it's what you're seeing. People say it compromises Stoic and his sort of badass qualities, but I don't think that's kind of a revealing statement, because what you're saying is that, like, when he becomes very vulnerable, then he's less impressive, he's less intimidating. Which, well, maybe intimidating is the wrong word, because those two things are hard to reconcile. But I don't think it's weak to feel things deeply, and and he has a little help with deciding everything, and he comes back and he's all right in the end. I think we have to sort of allow ourselves moments to feel like that when we do, instead of being like, oh, I shouldn't feel like this. This is wimpy, or if you're in my case, this is not manly. Because men are just supposed to be like super steady and never get upset and whatever. But that ain't right. That's not how it works in real life. Plus, the plot line has another use, which is that it explains why Stoic is level 1 at the start of the game. Because, we've established in these flashbacks that he's been fighting for centuries, and he ought to be like, level 100 or whatever the fucking cap is. I don't even know what the cap is in this game. I think it's 50. Yeah, it's 50. So he'd be level 50. But, that's not really... it doesn't really work for an RPG, so... He went back down to level 1 when he, locked himself in that cave and forgot his fighting techniques. Although I guess he didn't level up much during this last battle with Gallia. He must have been fighting like low-level enemies. But this was a fun moment for me because it's, we're at the clean slate portion of the history. And if anybody's watched that Let's Play and then watching this, you probably recognize a lot of these characters, or at least as many of them as I could recreate in XP, since Clean Slate was RPG Maker 2000. And so you can see, Nova's here, Turnus is around somewhere, Galdar's there, and Nova's talking to a griffin, which is foreshadowing, really, for later on in the game, but also consistent with Clean Slate, though, because her connection with her family's friendship with a clan of griffins was kind of a recurring subplot in that game, I guess. So we're about at the end of Stoic's tale here, and then we get into take kind of a dramatic turn towards the final fight with Sparrow. Your storytelling lacks depth. What a dick. That's pretty fucking funny, though. You could say nothing. It was a flawless piece of genius. This is like Twitter right now. Oh, here we go. Sparrow's here. And this is interesting, too, because, like, this is pretty much the only time in the game when, like, other characters get to tussle with Sparrow a little bit. It's brief, but, it's unusual, I guess, because it's only been him versus Shroud. To the point where there were people on the forums theorizing that Sparrow only existed in Shroud's head, but that would have been that wouldn't really work. It's not really that type of game. Interesting to think about, but it wouldn't really work. Now this is Mark did this fight scene here. I mean, I wrote the dialogue, but it's but usually I did most of the fight scenes, so I think Mark wanted to do this one. So I was like, yeah, go ahead, man. I was still working on flashbacks anyway, and so he did a good job with it. He had them fight on top of these wooden things. What do they call them anyway? They look like power lines, but they're not that. I don't know, just fucking like canopy or fuck. Somebody help me out in the comments. What do you? I don't know, man. I never worked at a mine. I don't really call this shit. So he did a nice job with this little fight here, but we're about at the end of it. Back at the now at the last fight, and I have this moment here. Oh wait, not yet. We gotta do the fairy. But I have this moment here where there's like a... Come on, hurry up. There's like a 20-second thing here where the two of them just kind of like circle each other. And it's a little indulgent, you know. But it gave me a chance to use another apocalyptic song. Make it a little more dramatic, because this is the last fight. And I think that kind of, the little build-up there kind of serves that purpose of informing, the player that this is the last fight. Like, this is serious business. And it's interesting how you can do that with storytelling in ways, like, other than having Shroud come out and be like, this is our last fight, Sparrow. Yeah, because he said that a couple times, actually, and you can't really trust him on that. But, like, one of my favorite examples, it's going to sound like a weird comparison, but the original Jaws. There's a scene in that, and I'm assuming that, no one's going to care if I spoil Jaws. It's a fucking 50-year-old movie that everybody's seen. That there's a scene in that with, they're on the beach, and the sheriff is nervous that the shark's going to attack. And there's a part where the shark does, you see this fin, and, like, he freaks out, but it turns out just to be, like, some pranksters with a fake shark fin swimming around. And then, but if you know that scene's a fake out, you pay attention, you can see that it was just, they don't play the Jaws music, that famous music, dun, 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 dun. They didn't play that. And then a few minutes later, when the shark actually does come after somebody, they do play the music. So that was a way of, that was the director, Spielberg, and, John Williams, telling the audience, like, no, this is real, man. This is not another fake out. So I always find that kind of stuff really interesting. Now we should talk about the scene at hand, because this is the big moment. This is the unmasking here. But Shroud's got to work for it a little bit. Right, here it is. We're going to finish this. See how he says that. He's right this time. Well, sort of. They don't fight anymore after this, but this is the last. Everything changes after this bit here. Although Sparrow unmasks him first, which sort of prompts everything. And then Sod figures it out because the voice changes. Sparrow was putting on a voice. But here we go. If anybody hasn't seen this yet, here it comes. It's Auburn. Holy shit, guys. So, what I was saying is that, you can't really convey this in a RPG Maker game without voice acting, which obviously was not in the budget. but she was putting on like a deeper voice when she was Sparrow. But then when she saw Saab without his mask, she lost it, and that's when he put it together. So, as far as I can tell, there weren't people. No, people didn't see this coming, or if they did, they were very quiet and didn't gloat or anything. I mean, in Exmoor, the big twist. I had a few people being like, "Totally called it, dude," which is fine. But this one, I didn't hear that. And if there are definitely a lot of clues. It's just so I was pretty pleased with that. I mean, there are a lot of red herrings too. Like I was working overdrive to put suspicion on Rain and Vec in particular, as well as kind of entertain some other suspects briefly. It's probably about half a dozen characters that come under suspicion, over the course of the game to this point. But and I think there's, in terms of how, like why we were able to do this and why people didn't seem to catch on. Like I said, there's probably somebody who did, but they never said anything about it. I think it helps that we kind of assume that a character like that is male, generally. Just like that sort of hooded, badass kind of character. Although, if you go back through the game, I think I was consistent with this. I may not be. But to my knowledge, the characters who know that Sparrow is Auburn don't use male pronouns when they talk about her. When they talk about Sparrow. Characters like Sod and Bones do, because they're just assuming that it's a dude. But what do you call it? Kovac doesn't, and I don't think Vec does. And the hand finds out at some point, like around the end of Arc 4, Danica figures it out. She's got a line that suggests that. Right around the time that Laura figures it out, actually. If you go back and look at that scene, there's a part where Laura looks at her in a strange way, and she's kind of figured it out. And she's about to reveal here that she knew, but she felt like, Sod yelled at her before when she was saying, kind of meddling in his love life, so maybe she ought to keep quiet. But in this case, it was pretty important information that she kept to herself. So the pronoun thing, and I honestly, that's hard to keep up. Like, probably in my, Let's Play, my narration up to this point, I've probably referred to Sparrow as he a few times. Because I can't say she, because that's a giveaway, which is an interesting thing to think about, right? Because, a character like that, if you call it he, that's not considered, evidence. But if I were to say she, then all of a sudden people are like, whoa, wait a minute, it's a girl. So that's interesting to think about, too. I had a friend who played this game, who was, an artist, very good artist, and she said, she told me that part of it was because you wouldn't picture a redhead to be wearing an outfit that had so much orange, because I guess those colors don't go together. And she said that's like Baron wearing purple, it just wouldn't work. So that's kind of funny, which, I'd like to say that was intentional, but it wasn't. So, but there are, we've started Arc 6, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I just want to finish talking about Sparrow still, because it's a big deal. There's a few hints. They're subtle, but they're there. The biggest one is, the biggest one is actually Auburn's last name, which is Iliaka. It's only mentioned a few times, but that's actually a scientific name for the fox sparrow, which is, the bird. So, if anybody bothered to Google the the character names, they would have found that out. But I don't think anybody did. But there's a line in Arc 4 where Finley says something like, "Why am I the only one here with a costume?" Because he's on a team with Laurel and Auburn who don't have any. And Auburn says, "I left mine at home." And that's actually pretty much a straight-up confession, but it comes off like a sort of, sarcastic gag, a little one-liner. And, nobody really thinks much of it until they play again. And like, oh, shit. So that kind of thing is fun. So I'd say, don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I call that plot line a success. But now, more shit's going down. And then, Ketsu's got his wings now, which is bad fucking news. Throws everything that people might assume about the kind of, the gods in Solest up in the air. Because those wings are supposed to be, a sign of Arcadius' favor. Whether they actually are or not, we don't know. It's one of those things that people theorize about. But generally, there's a pretty broad consensus that that's a sign of closeness with Arcadius. So having a member of the hand, the leader in particular, get them is quite unnerving. And Mina doesn't realize yet that he's a bad dude. Because he's been sort of kind of, I don't know, what do you call it, putting on a front while he's working in Harrow to build their headquarters. So he just was making his group, I called it the palm of Arcadius, rather than the hand. So just sort of acting like a more generic religious organization rather than a hate group, which, frankly, if I can get my soapbox a little bit, seems to happen a lot in the real world too. Like, there's this group out there, they call themselves Focus on the Family, which, if you hear that and you're like, oh, well, that's sweet, family. Everybody loves families. Well, except it's just pretty much like a fucking anti-gay organization. That's like all it is. All they do is bitch about gay people. And so, it's pretty insidious. And it's, this, the phrase family values, it tends to, at least in America, tends to conjure up these ideas of, various types of bigotry and moral censorship or whatever, and rather than like actually, family values, like, I would think family values would be stuff like, I don't know, give people family leave or something, you know what I mean, or like, like helping poor families so the kids don't fucking starve. I mean, that would be my thought of it, but that's clearly. It's a very radical thing to say. Just sort of, well, really any sort of empathy is radical these days. It's sad. But enough of that. So we have Ketsu fighting the whole Tutancore here. And, this, I'm not sure if I handle this, like, too well. Like, none of them even land a hit. Not even, like, Pilk turn into, like, dragons and shit. And then Ceneric, who has a little bit of a badass moment here where he keeps fucking walking even when keeps getting hit by spells, which does freak out Ketsu a little bit, but he manages to kind of talk himself up again. And it's a little, it's kind of, I don't know, not very nice. I guess it might not be fair to the Tutancore. Like, maybe they should have at least gotten one hit, other than Tyrannus' initial ambush, which doesn't count. But Ketsu gets a little away with his. Ketsu gets a little carried away with his bluster there, and reveals that he's, his Gallian sympathies, which of course spurs me into action like immediately. Because she's not into not into that. She don't play that shit. Um, but she's there's a lot I could say about that. Where she's basically she and Galdo were more or less blinded by their concerns about Harold's economic well-being, and because if you see it in Clean Slate, it was a lot smaller and kind of we're only seeing like this little public square here. When you actually walk around Harold in a little while, it's big. And Clean Slate was very small, and so they managed to grow the economy there, and they definitely thought that this investment by Ketsu and his group would be good for the town, which it was, but it came at quite a cost. And even though we're not in Harold anymore, I should point out that we used autumn colors for Harold. There's a couple of reasons for that. First is that I just love autumn in New England, and I know Mark does too. And so it's just a beautiful. Like, I don't know what part of the world you guys are from watching this, but New England is not really exceptional in that many ways, except autumn. You come here in like October, and everything's fucking beautiful. Just like my regular drive to work is like beautiful. It's great. Of course now we're in the dead of winter, and it's nothing special now, but so we did want to have like an autumn area, and we had but it's also you could argue that there's a certain symbolism to it, right? Because the trees, as pretty as the colors are, it's leaves dying. It's so you could make the argument that having autumn trees in Harold kind of represents the town kind of losing some of its integrity or some of its purity. So I think that helps to evoke that while still being pretty to look at. And now we have Sod wandering all depressed, but Auburn kind of has a pretty immediate crisis of conscience when she finds out that she's been fighting Sod this whole time. And so she kind of, without coming out and admitting it, she's, I guess, trying to make things up a little bit with him. She doesn't really want to see him yet, but she does leave him the book that she stole, which everybody assumed she had just destroyed. But she kept it, which is the smart thing to do when you have a document like that could that could cause a lot of trouble for certain people, certain powerful people. So she gave it back to Sod. And I remember I asked Luna to do these reading sprites that you're seeing here. Lunaria, I've mentioned before, she's done a lot of random things for this game. She's a big RPG Maker friend and works for Dedger. She did work for Dedger. I think she's doing something else now. So I asked her to do these because otherwise it was just like Sod standing up, reciting passages from the book, and it was just kind of visually lame. So felt like he could sit and read. And he must be restless because he gets to a few different spots over the course of that scene there, so he's kind of pacing in the middle of it. Which, sometimes if I get really worked up about something, I'll just pace a little bit. So it felt true to me. I don't know, G-Note. So we're about... Oh yeah, so then we're introducing the concept of a new gun for filming, one that would consolidate his various guns. Yeah, he says I'm going to consolidate them, which is very handy. So Saad's kind of run off. Again, it's funny because we had this, this scene with Stoic and his flashback and how he kind of retreated from everything when he was depressed. And now we kind of have this bit with Saad where, like, things go wrong, and what he's doing is just withdrawing from his friends. Of course, he has like a sort of plan in mind, which I won't really get into too many details, but it's very kind of like self-pitying, self-righteous. It's very Shroud, or at least his worst instincts. But there'll be time to talk about that. So I think we got 1 or 2 more cutscenes here, and then I think I'll stop it when we get in Harrow, because this is getting long. But we covered a lot, though, didn't we? This is a very consequential half hour of the game. Oh, I forgot about this bit here. So Kovac's in jail, which, fucking rich, powerful guy in jail. That's how you know that this is a fantasy game. Hey-oh. But it's like that joke about Monopoly, right? You can tell it's an old game because there's a luxury tax, people go to jail. But this is actually the start of Kovac's, I don't know if I want to say, maybe you could say redemption, or at least sort of realization that he might not have been on the right path. Because even though he's not happy to be in jail, obviously, and doesn't want to spend his life in prison, or what's left of it, he kind of concedes there that he deserves it. He's not like these fucking people who, like, insist they're innocent. Like, honest to God, some of these politicians today, you could catch them with, like, a fucking dead prostitute and get a picture of them, like, holding a bloody knife, and they'd still be on Twitter being like, I didn't do anything, I'm totally innocent. It's ridiculous, but that's not who Kovac is. He'll certainly lie when he needs to, but he's not quite that far gone into, like, narcissistic delusion, I guess is what you could use for that. So Saad and Rana have a little tiff here. He's really rude to her at first because he's already in a bad mood and, he's not happy with her. But then when she finds out he's got some dirt in the hand, well, then they might be friends. Priorities. Alright, here we are. So we'll stop here, and I'm looking forward to playing more, wandering around this place, and I'll talk to you then. Peace.